Hey everybody, welcome back to the Headway Podcast. I'm Shane, your host, and with me is co-host Rachel.
Hey everyone! Last time we discussed the topic of alcohol after a brain injury. Today we're going to be discussing a topic that is quite close to home for many of our clients, returning to work.
Returning to work is one of the biggest challenges that individuals with brain injury may face. Although it may not apply to everyone, several of our clients come to Headway seeking support in returning to work.
Here in Headway, our community reintegration team work tirelessly with clients in supporting them to return to work. This work can be done both on a one-to-one basis between key workers and clients, and we also run jobs clubs throughout the year.
Returning to work can be a daunting concept for anyone following a brain injury. Individuals may experience difficulties for memory, concentration and fatigue, all of which plays a factor in their ability to return to work or to previous work environments.
Yeah, exactly. And then on the other hand, financial worries can also lead to anxiety and stress. Today we are joined by 4 incredible guests who are going to share their journeys of returning to work after their brain injuries. Let's meet them.
Hi, I'm Linda. I had a brain hemorrhage about 2.5 years ago, and I was introduced to Headway about a year after the hemorrhage, and I met Rachel, Shane, and they got me out of my routine and into some programs, and I've never looked back since.
Hi, I'm Yvette. I got a stroke in 2020 in June, and I referred myself to Headway. I didn't get any support really after the stroke, so everything was just self-referral. But thank God I got through with you guys, because I really got so much help from the psychotherapist, I think, for a whole year, and they paid for me and they really helped me through my recovery. So yeah, I'm grateful.
I'm Fiona. I had my stroke in 2019, and similar to Yvette, I was discharged with no supports. So I found the Irish Heart Foundation about 15 months later, and then after I finished up in the National Rehab Hospital, I was referred on to Headway and have been getting support from them as well since.
Hi, I'm Rachel. My brain tumour was discovered in September 2021. I was in the National Rehabilitation Hospital and I was referred to Headway from them. And I've kind of engaged with that since, and I'm very grateful for the support, and I've come on leaps and bounds, I must say.
So now that we've met our 4 incredible guests for today, let's hear from them about their journeys to return to work after their brain injuries.
Yeah, so initially when I was discharged from hospital, I found it really difficult because I wasn't able to read properly and I wasn't able to retain information, and I wasn't obviously then able to write properly. And to get social welfare is really difficult because there's a lot of forms to fill in and the process can be quite complicated. So it took me a good few months to even apply for social welfare. And then comes the questions, why didn't you do this months ago, which was a bit of an issue. But once I got to speak to somebody, they were really, really understanding and they were very helpful. And I found since then, if I have to ring somebody, I just start with, I've had a stroke, I might ask the same questions, or I might not understand you and you have to talk, you might have to use different language. And I feel that when you're upfront with people, they are a lot more patient with you and they are a lot more understanding. So I do have to say, once I disclosed the social welfare, my difficulties, they were very helpful. And even then, one of the men, I had to move from, I think it was long-term illness to disability benefit. I didn't realise that it was going to change over. I probably got a letter and forgot I got the letter and didn't do anything. So once I rang him, he was like, okay, this is my direct line, and if there's any other issues going forward, just ring me directly. So I have to say, for me, it was a really good service, but I know that it can be not so good for other people sometimes.
Yeah, for me, because when I went out sick, so automatically, because I work for the government, so they put me on sick benefit, but they put me on COVID pay, because then you would get all your salary, you'd get your full salary without taking your sick pay out or anything. So it was fine for a while, getting my pay and the sick pay. So I didn't have to struggle really at that moment. It was fine. Yeah.
I don't have such a good story, unfortunately. So I'm self-employed.
Oh yeah, that's hard.
So the process was not an easy one, and I actually have to thank the rehab hospital in the end. So I know my mother went to information place, citizens information, thank you, I can be bad with remembering words, And they were really nice and helpful and went through, but because I was self-employed, I didn't have enough stamps of one section and I had the other stamps for other sections. So when I got sick in September, eventually the day I think I was discharged from rehab, which was March, I didn't get anything until after that. And it was only because I was rejected for whatever it was in rehab. And I got really upset because I'd filled in different forms for different types as advised and kept coming back no. So I remember they all pulled together at the very end, and it's the disability pension that I am currently in. So that has been extremely helpful, but I did feel really, really bad. I've always paid my taxes, never thought I'd need anything. And I had a lot of clients who were on different benefits. I always said I would never need anything. It wasn't, for me. And it's not until you're in the situation. And I felt very hopeless. So I have a big thanks to the rehab hospital in relation to that. But yeah, I found it very, very difficult.
And it's disappointing because it's such a struggle when you already aren't 100% and you have to fight for it.
Big time. My mother initially helped with forms and that type of thing, and like that understanding, but then to get a letter going, you're not eligible, go away, I felt extremely rejected. I felt really hard being sick. I mean, who doesn't? But feeling a bit helpless. And one of the things was I was scared of my own shadow. I couldn't ask anyone for a cup of tea, let alone anything else. So I hated relying on others, and then to kind of get a letter saying, no, go away kind of thing was really, really hard. I'm one of those who do my taxes on time because I'd be terrified of, late doing anything wrong or late fees or, just anything like that. And I have always, done everything. And I felt pretty bad, to be honest. So.
And would they have advised you, on what to do?
No,
what to apply for if you don't qualify for one?
Not really. No, not at all.
So you just left
yeah. And I was, as I said, very lucky. It was the day before I think I left rehab where I think my dad had screenshotted me the letter to say no, and don't worry, Ray, we'll all look after you, or we'll all come together. And I never felt as useless. And I have to say the different therapists got together and helped me fill out forms and got supportive letters. I don't know what they wrote, but it was nice. And I'm just so lucky I had family support, because from September to March or April I had absolutely nothing. And October, as a self-employed person, is when you pay the tax for the years previously. So my accountant and my mum really helped. Luckily, I'm up to date, which I can't say for all my colleagues, usually scrambling around in October. And the year previous had been my best year in work. So I had a pretty, hefty, not ridiculous, but, as I did.
A lot of money
exactly. But
when there's no money coming in.
Yeah, and that was the most difficult thing. So I'm just so grateful, and I'm fully aware that not everybody has those supports around them. Yeah. And that made me really think, about others in those situations. But it doesn't do anything to encourage self-employment, because you don't know. I always say you don't know. I went for an eye test and never went home. So you just don't know. So I am extremely grateful for the supports that I've had, both professionally and personally at home. So.
And I can concur a little bit with that, Yvette. I know when I got the brain hemorrhage originally, you don't feel that you're entitled to anything. I think your self-concept and your self-esteem is so low that you don't feel entitled. And normally I would have been a person to fight for everybody's rights, but on this occasion I wasn't able, and it took me a long time. I can't even remember how I got there, but I do remember ringing them and then being when I cert, then I would have anticipated. They were really kind. And I would say, if you ask me a question, you may have to rephrase it. And I explained from the very beginning. And then my speech took a while to get going. Once I got going, I'm fine. But I explained that to them, and I found the office very, very kind. And then subsequently, any help I needed after that, I would talk to Rachel, was my caseworker with Headway, and we'd figure things out. But also for me, it was, I didn't feel entitled, which was, I don't know where that comes from, because I've paid taxes all my life and things like that. And I would be the first to advocate for somebody else. But when it came to me, I wasn't. So I think that's an important message, saying, the supports are there and you're entitled to them. And seek help, I think. If you can't do it for yourself, get it across the line.
It'd be easier to advocate for other people than for yourself,
Yeah.
because it's not personal to you, you're not
Yeah.
the one being, I don't want to say victimising,
Yeah.
the one they're saying no to.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes as well, when you're talking to them over the phone rather than filling in forms, it's more personal.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a difficult situation, and I think maybe it could be a thing where if there was a service where people could go in with a disability and sit down and talk to somebody, and for them to actually understand, like, a brain injury is different to a broken neck.
Yeah.
Yes, like, we genuinely don't understand and need
Yeah.
that extra support.
Yeah, because sometimes those questions are just, you don't know what to write. Like, you're just looking and wondering, am I answering right, wrong? Are they asking this or that? Like, I know what you mean. Like, I remember myself, they eventually sent me a letter from the illness benefit and told me that they've randomly selected me to review me, like, if I'm really sick. Like, to explain, and they wrote this letter, or they'll cut out my, they'll stop paying me. I need to send it back, I think, in 2 weeks or something, to explain, like, am I really sick? And, to feel like, why am I sick? Like, they're not, because I think I'm young, so they were just assuming, so I had to feel like, you write there, like, I had a stroke. Like, you're writing, you feel like you're just being, like, someone is doubting you. Like, they're doubting you. And I just felt, I've always paid tax. I've always worked since I moved to this country. So I just felt like, I really felt put down. Like, it's not money that I didn't put in, Yeah.
I think struggling to understand, it was really, really tough. It continues to be in certain respects, but just, I don't understand the process. I don't understand the forms. I don't need this. I had a lot of self. And then, when you finally ask for help and then being told, no, you're not entitled, I really, really struggled with that.
Yeah, because it's very hard to ask. Like, I'd be the first person to help other people, but I find it very difficult to ask for help.
Yeah.
And then it's like, it's taken me so long to ask for help that you kind of nearly expect someone to go, okay, like, she's finally asked, so we'll help her.
Yeah.
Whereas they don't realise that on the other side either.
And I think we all have that in common, saying, we'd advocate for others. And the nature of my job, I do a lot of that as well. And we realise how bad we are for asking for help. And then, when you finally do, and then being told no was really, really hard.
Especially when you don't understand the reason why you've been told.
Yeah.
And the self-doubt, because I was getting different messages. One was saying, yes, it's going to go ahead. And then I got an email to say it's not going ahead. And then there's a fear that comes with that. And then you're kind of going, oh, am I going to have to go back to work? Rather than, and then I have to give up all the activities that I was doing that were kind of bringing me back to baseline. And so it's that pressure you feel, and it comes with that. It's a kind of a feeling of depression. It's stress. It's stress that you don't need.
Pay your rent or your mortgage or your bills or whatever.
Yeah.
They don't go away just because you're not getting money in.
Get kids to school and things like that.
Yeah.
So it continues. Life continues, but it does help to get the support. And I suppose my message to people: if you don't get it, if you don't get the thumbs up the first time round, you may have to go back again and again. And it might be worth doing that. So don't be despondent. And again, I suppose to ask for help with that, because the other person can jolly you along, and it overcomes some of that self-doubt.
Yeah, I totally echo that. I think it was the fourth time or fourth set of forms or whatever. And the hospital essentially did it for me. So ask for help of others. Big time. Big time.
And the more, I suppose, agencies that you're involved with, it supports you, because we're not here, we have a great time, but we're not here for the crack, so it's a genuine. And my GP said to me, because the first time there was a question about it, she said, Headway don't take people unless they're genuine. It's hard to get into Headway. So I thought, oh, qualified. But there is that question. You're not going to go for MRIs. You're not going back to bone mount. You're not just for the just to pass the day. Just to pass the day because I've something to do. We're here for a reason.
My GP even refused to refer me to Headway. Like he said, I don't think you're bad enough. Like it was like, I remember the first time after the stroke, they saw me walking and was like, oh, you're not too bad. And that's what they said. And that time I was struggling. I was just thinking, oh my God. Like, you just... Yeah, because you're walking and, I suppose he's an older GP, so I suppose he assumed that I'll be limping in and, I'll just be, dribbling and not talking.
I always think that when I see people, because they're like, oh, you look well, whatever. And I'm like, it's no harm that they think I'll be, carrying my arm behind me or my head behind me, and then it's not too bad. But I think even like that, your GP going, no, I don't think you're bad enough. I had the opposite, like even in hospital on day one or rehab hospital, I was like, I'm taking someone's space. This is awful. Like I had one row on day one in the matter where it's COVID related, but they wouldn't let somebody in, and I had a huge row, and because I said there was other ladies in my room who couldn't leave their bed, and I said, I'm not taking somebody's place from that, because I kept kind of going out, and they were like, oh no, and book a time for someone to come in, and I was like, I'm not taking a time off them, because it was only one person a day or one person whatever, and I was like, I'm absolutely not doing that. There's nothing wrong with me, so it can be hard then when you're like, I'm fine, this is ridiculous, I should be fine, to ask for the help. So
same thing happened to me when I went to the NRH. I was an outpatient and it took 6 months to get in, and I fought to get in there, and then the first day I was like, should I even be here? Like, I can speak. And she was like, well, yeah, you can speak, but you're not making sense and your words aren't forming properly. And I was like, oh yeah, but I'm grand. She's like, no, you really aren't. Well, she obviously didn't say, no, you're not. But they're like, oh no, it's okay for you to be here.
Big time.
And our next guest is Rachel.
I really struggled. So I left work. I'm self-employed and I'm in the legal game. And I think returning to work, when I was in the National Rehab Hospital, I remember saying, I'm out of work, a couple of months now, and I need to go back. And I think in their own way, being supportive, but very much going, no, you can't go back yet. My retention of information and my words, generally, I was struggling with. And I suppose when you don't have an employer that either supports you being off or encouraging you to get back or anything like that, it can be really hard to know where or what you're doing. I remember, I think I said earlier, I went for an eye test and I never went home. And I remember Friday, the 17th of September, 2021, and I was due to work on Monday. And the legal vacation was nearly at an end, but I had something in on the Monday. And I remember that didn't happen. And then a bit of brain surgery a week later, and talking to my consultant. And I said, okay, look, let's just, throw it to me. Are we talking Christmas? Are we talking, and I'm pushing it, are we go New Year? Like, oh, everyone be jealous, all that. And if he had said to me, Rachel, in 2.5 years, you'd be trying to get back to work, I'm happy he didn't say that. And I think he said to my sister, who was my next of kin, like, look, she doesn't get it, but that's fine, And it was really, really tough. So I remember then, after being in rehab, I was in the outpatients for a while, and I had a really, really lovely OT girl. And I remember going, and again, I felt I was taking up their time. Someone else needed the support more. And sure, I was grand. And I remember one day just having a conversation with her about work. And she said, Rachel, my understanding of your work is, it's reputation based. And I don't want you to go back and mess it up or feck it up. And I think I remember having a cry. And I remember that day we didn't do any rehab work. We went for a walk around the hospital or around the grounds, and just had how's life, kind of any holidays planned kind of conversation. And it was probably the best session I ever had there. And it was after that, and I remember being referred to Headway, and I think when I accepted that I wasn't ready, because I was really aiming for the new legal term in October 22, and I would say to myself, you can't, if you're gone more than a year, people forget you, they've moved on, you know, they might have said, oh, I hope you're doing okay, or anything like that, but, you know, they move on with their lives, they work with other people, and I just thought I'd be completely forgotten about. And I remember when I accepted that, and I did a Headway course, and it was a remote thing, and a lot of the I called them my little granddads when I still meet up with them, and they were either retired or took early retirement, and I was the only one kind of going back to work or hoping to, and they were really, really supportive. And I think they were nearly the first group of people who I'd spoken to who had gone through similar or the same thing in rehab. There was one girl I did make friends with, but I was very kind of much to myself, which wasn't like me at all personality wise, and I really, really struggled with that. So I think when I accepted all that and took a step back, and I went, look, hopefully I won't be off work, you know, forever. I need to kind of take advantage. So I still do go for a coffee by myself, and things like that, whereas that terrified me when I got out of hospital. I couldn't ask for a coffee. I couldn't ask anyone for anything. I was just so embarrassed by everything and what I looked like, and just my whole personality was shaken. So I aimed then for October 23. Then, unfortunately, around this time last year, when going for the MRI, routine MRI, I was told there was slight regrowth on my tumour, so I'd need a course of radiation. So that really threw me again in my plans. But I said, no, it's not going to defeat me this time. So I put off trying to go back to work. But in October, I said, you know what, I will try just go into work and sit at my old desk and go for a coffee with a friend or two, and hopefully people still know who I am. And I have to say, that was the best thing I've ever done. The amount of people that has just come up to me, oh my God, it's so good to see you. I thought I'd be forgotten. You know, that's the biggest fear, being forgotten when you work so hard to get to a certain point in your career. And colleagues have just been so, so kind to me. You know, if there's anything you need now, I don't know if I actually, you know, had to call them up and say, oh yeah, well actually, you know, Brenda, will you do that for me, whether they would or not? No, I'm sure you know the genuine ones, and people who have been there for you that you don't expect, and maybe the people you thought would be warned. But then I'm sure you all know, you know, people when you get sick, you know, don't know what to say, so it's not out of badness sometimes. And there are people I'm sure who picked up some of my work quite happily, but look, that's life. But I've one or two colleagues who I haven't sent back a hi guys, I'm back yet. I'm hoping to do that soon. But there are one or two people that I've let know, and I've done one or two pieces of work which I thought I'd be absolutely terrified, but I could see a bit of my old self then, because I was like, I don't know how this is going to go. And it was really good. And I was in court one day, and a particular judge said, you know, at the end of it, really good to see you back. Aww. And that just meant a hell of a lot, because there's been different appointments obviously since I've been gone. And I was like, they want to know who I am and, you know, my kind of form or anything. But one of them was really just that what was said was just really, really kind and really encouraging. And even my seat in work, which sounds like nothing, that wasn't. So you get a seat by a kind of a lottery system and a seniority, and that mine was kept for me. So, and that sounds really silly, but having somewhere to go back to sit down was a huge, huge thing. So I would say, you know, take your time, rely on colleagues if you have them, whether you're self-employed or employed. Ask for help, ask your colleagues. I've gotten one or two things in where I've gone, do you mind if I run this by you? And it'd be someone of a similar vintage, whereas before I would have said, why am I asking, you know, them or whatever? I should know more. But it's not the case at all, and they're more than happy to help. And I've said, lads, I'm going to be using this brain tumour for a hell of a long time. So, if I'm in court and I hold my head, you better sit down and be quiet. And they're like, oh, you're pushing this one now, So, turn it into, positive's the wrong word, but, turn it, do it and ask for help and rely on colleagues and your friends, because you'll be surprised how much they're there and you're not forgotten.
It sounds as well that you had the opportunity to take things at your own pace. When you said you didn't email people yet to say that you're back, so you were able to take on the bits of work that you knew you were capable of, and then that in itself builds confidence slowly over time to then go, okay, I've managed to do this. And then when you're ready, you'll email them the next.
That's what I'm hoping. And he used the word confidence, which is my terrifying word. I would have always said, no, like, I'm grand, I'm not, hugely confident or whatever. Oh my God. It wasn't until I got sick that I even understood that word. And that is a huge, huge challenging word for me. It's been the toughest thing. And I would have always said, I'd like to think, maybe people wouldn't agree, but that, I was kind to people, sick or had loss in their life or, pregnancy, miscarriages, anything like that. I would always said I was good with colleagues. And then with me, I was just absolutely terrified. But yeah, it's working on your confidence, doing one or two little things where one of the girls came up to me recently and said, I heard you at lunchtime, trying to negotiate there. There's nothing wrong with you. Do you know what I mean? Old Rachel's back. And little things like that are just great, hugely beneficial, as I said, to confidence. And that's the thing. I think I'm, getting ready to send those emails. But even kind of you saying you don't have to fully go back or, take it bit by bit, that's been really, really tough, because I've wanted to go, I'm fully back, but absolutely terrified and trying to find that balance. But I think I'm doing it. I think I'm getting there, and everyone has their own challenges and own pace, and that's fine. I was trying to rush myself because I felt incompetent, and to kind of take a step back and go, no, Rachel, that's not the case. You're okay. You'll do okay, and I have to give it a lash anyway. So
because the thing is, you want a successful return to work. You don't want to try and fail, because that's going to knock your confidence.
And that was the biggest thing, and that was the biggest thing that was said to me by the therapist in rehab. And it was when I went home that day, I went, I don't want to rush myself back and screw it up. And people just go, oh, fair play, she's trying, but bless her, she's not well. I was like, I don't want pity and I don't want anything like that. So absolutely.
And do you feel like the environment is like, is it the same, or do you feel like it's like, challenging to be in the same environment?
It is a bit different. I'm trying not to, when if you have a client or something talk to you, go, no, you think you've got problems, love, come have a day with me. Yeah, exactly. And I do think it is a bit different. And I look at things differently, definitely. I've gotten older, and I'm sure some of that is, oh no, Rachel, sorry, you're pushing on, you're a bit of an L one now. But same but different. But I think as well, COVID, because it was kind of towards the end of COVID where I got sick. So I think COVID, had a lot of change in the profession. But I think life definitely has had an impact and changing. But hopefully for the better when I'm trying to pick out the positives.
Do you feel like you're as competent as you were before, or?
Let's talk to me in a few years. Of course I am. I'm completely confident. Confident, however, is what I need to work on.
I think that's really interesting, because to me, my perception of the legal profession is very cutthroat, whereas it sounds like they were really supportive, and yet I'm a teacher and it's 4.5 years and I'm still not back to work because I'm not being facilitated properly to get back to work, to even try. Because they're saying I have to work 3 full days, and I'm like, well, can I not start one morning and then 2 mornings? And it's just very much a no.
Yeah, no, I can understand that, whereas I would have been jealous of your circumstance and going, oh, well, sure, you're a teacher, so it's just, even trying to get back, surely they're more supportive for us. And so that's funny, because someone's saying to me, oh, can you not get back, 1 day a week or something? And I'm like, that's not really how my job works. Because if someone goes, oh, Rachel's back, oh, we'll give her this and we'll give her this, and suddenly you could be really busy. Or I was like, I could tell people I'm back, and a few people go, oh no, look, she hasn't been well, so might not give her anything. So, and the nature of my job as well, I may never get paid for stuff, and it's extremely, difficult. But I would have thought, someone in that kind of more government supported job, you know what I mean, that kind of thing, that would have been
No, and even
easier.
the fact that if I'm working 3 days a week and someone's covering my other 2 days, technically I'm the, say, head teacher of that class or whatever. So I have to do all the paperwork, I have to do all the planning, I have to do all that.
Yes.
And there's so much outside of the 9 to 2 that people don't, because it's teaching time or FaceTime 9 to 2, and there's hours upon hours of work outside of that people don't see. And because I'd be the 3 out of 5 days, I'm the one that have to do all that as well.
Okay.
So, and then I think as well, I didn't have a supportive working environment to begin with before I got sick. So it's also not helpful either.
Yeah, no, that's funny, because I think legal can absolutely be cutthroat.
Yeah.
No question. And I suppose as a self-employed, you find out the people who, took over maybe the things you were in a supportive way, and the other people that took over and took advantage, correct. But that's really interesting, because I would have thought you've a lot more support, but there you go, there's cutthroat in every
I think it's
in
just
every
not the
profession.
understanding of the head injury, because as I told you, myself, I'm a nurse, and they couldn't understand, I'm working in the environment, but they're not particularly, they wouldn't be working with people with brain injuries, and it was just a small section, the ward I was working is the ward that actually worked with people with brain injury. They understood me, but the rest of the big bosses and all, they're like, oh, she's fine, and I understand, when they're not supporting you because they're thinking you're talking, you're making sense, so they're thinking you look great, and that's the thing, and even for me, the challenge was that they were trying to get me to work after 3 months, and I was ready, I thought, yeah, good, it was failed anyway, it was a failed go back to work, because you're in your brain, you're thinking you can do what you could do before, and they threw me in the middle of the ward, and with the noises and bells ringing and people calling, and you have to do medication, and I just crashed. I just couldn't, and I had to, by then when I was going back to work, I had not even gone to NRH, and is when they referred me. Yeah, I was not referred, because when I left hospital, I left the matter, and I was told I could go back to work in 6 weeks. I was told, you could drive in 2 weeks. And I was thinking, that's cool, that's nice.
And you think you're a lot better than you are.
Of course. And it's only because I worked in a rehab, place whereby the OTs, I was telling them, I was told I could drive in 2 weeks. They're like, who told you? I said, I was told that. And they were like, no, you can't. You need to get, assessed and everything. And honestly, it's my workplace that referred me to NRH. The lady in the matter, the OT, she was like, you're fine. I think you're fine. You're good to go back to work.
And the thing is, because you have brain damage, or because you have a brain injury or whatever it is, post-stroke, you're actually not seeing the reality. You're seeing it from a brain damaged point of view.
Yes.
And you're I was able to learn to mask a lot of things so that people wouldn't take advantage of me. But then that meant people weren't believing me when I was actually being honest about the things I was finding difficult. Because when I look back, up to 6, 7, 8 months post-stroke, I was... I didn't know what I was thinking about, but people thought I was absolutely grand.
Yeah. And there is that part of you that just wants to forget about all the attention and people to leave you alone. And the way to do that would be to go back to work.
To be normal.
And to rush back to it. And I'm a nurse as well. And when you're there, you're expected to perform. There's no, you're not going to get the soft jobs. That's it. You're part of a team now. I mean, sympathy maybe for an hour,
And even
you
to
know.
be in charge of medication, like,
Yeah.
that's very
Like it's
Yeah.
just it's mad. Like, you know, I remember I was doing medication, someone came and spoke to me and I was like, what was I doing? Like, you know, you just forget. You genuinely, and that's when reality hit me, like, you know, I'm not like, you know, this, I'm not ready, you know.
Because I remember the first time I went to the shops and could remember 3 things that I was supposed to buy, and that was 5 months after my stroke. So I couldn't imagine you being at work 3 months going, okay, I have to
Ringing, people calling.
spend all
There's
this.
so much. There's just there's so much stimulation. It's just,
And your sensory, so your post-traumatic,
oh,
banging doors, or even now if someone...
trolleys.
just
everything. There's just so much.
Yeah.
I think that like you look fine
Yeah.
is a big thing. I remember like that in the rehab hospital and being upset, going, you know, I'm taking someone's bed and all that kind of thing. And I remember one of the nurses saying, you know, I was just upstairs because where the amputees are, and one of them said, God, like I mightn't have a leg, but God love them downstairs. Like I still have my head. And that actually really resonated with me because I felt so bad. I was like, sure, there's someone else that needs to be here. And I feel like a horrible person. It's like, well, he's lost a leg and he's struggling with that. But he said he's so happy. God love them downstairs. You know, they're struggling with their heads. And it totally made me think from a different point of view altogether.
I think to take things in baby steps, I thought I was much better than I was earlier, and I wanted to go back. And then it was family support that said, you're not going anywhere. My parents are down the country, and I felt if they saw me, I'd be going to say, you'd get as far as Nice and you wouldn't travel any further. So, and it was my sister at the time was treating me like a concussion, you know, a lot of GA players down the country. And then that was the reality. I didn't get that support in the hospital.
No.
You know, you're on your own, really. Maybe because I was a nurse, they felt I should know.
And I think maybe that.
But I didn't know. And I didn't.
But she didn't get support and she was not a nurse.
Yeah, I didn't. I mean, I suppose the thing that did stop me going back was the headaches, which thankfully it did stop me going back, because it would have been harder to go back and fail or to go back and do damage and do reputational damage as well. So it's just the baby steps, and then to do the groups or go to the art group, even the challenge of me getting a Lewis into town and changing over. I think it was an hour and a half late the first day. You know, just the reality, time and space is still a problem for me.
Yeah.
Just that time and space. You know, I can drift off and then suddenly the Lewis goes by and I'm at another stop. The minor details, and no one will know about those things, but they happen all the time. I have that constant. If I go on my phone, I'd end up in... So, you know, I'm just not tuned in, you know, the triggers aren't there like they used to be. But to take tiny steps and test yourself each stage, you were very brave to go back to work. You know, very brave.
Our next guest today is Yvette.
As I spoke earlier, like, you know, I returned to work initially. It was not good because I just returned because I wanted to prove to myself that I can do it. So I returned. It was a failed return to work. So is when I engaged with NRH, and they were really upset that I even ever attempted to go back to work, and that the work even took me in, even, you know, without even getting a letter from a doctor to say that I could return to work. Like, you know, I'm fit to return to work, because my GP, as I told you, my GP was dismissive. I was okay to return. Like, you know, I seemed fine. I was making conversation, so I was fine. So anyway, I engaged with NRH, and I think I engaged with them for almost more than a year. And it's when the vocational OT is the one who had to speak on my behalf to return to work, like, because my workplace wanted me to go back, like, you know, I'm a nurse and I worked 12 hours and they wanted me to go full on, you know, into the ward. And they told them that it has to be a process, like, you know, they have to ease me into work, like they start with maybe 2, 3, 4 hours, like, you know, increasing until when I'm able to tolerate it, like, you know, however long I'm able to tolerate it. And I remember I started with 4 hours, and it was even challenging. Even those 4 hours, it was so challenging, like, to just be in work for 4 hours, because it was just a challenging environment. So they told them I cannot work in the same environment I was working, because there's just too much stimulation. So they had to get me a place whereby, like, you know, like, I could work without a lot of distractions, because I was not able to, like, it's not I was not able, but the distractions meant that I was going to be challenged in my job. So they got me a place. They managed to get me a place. I mean, fair play to them, but I think the OT really pushed them. They got me a place where I was making phone calls. Like, you know, they got me a nice little office, and I was making phone calls for patients who had had surgery. So it was just checking up on them and, just sending them letters for, to have x-rays and all that. And it was nice for, for the 4 weeks. And I remember for 4 weeks I was doing 4 hours, and the occupational, to be honest, I didn't feel supported so much, because she'd come and ask me, how are you? I would be like, I'm so tired, I feel really tired. They're like, oh, aren't we all, you're brushed off, aren't we all? So you kind of feel like you have to push on, because nobody is going to sympathize with you. So I pushed on. I remember I got to 6 hours, and I told her, I don't know if I can do any more than 6 hours. They said, oh no, you have to do more than 6 hours, because we can't get you a contract that is less than 6 hours. You know what that means? They just try to explain, all this jargon. So anyway, I was pushed to 8 hours, but to be honest, I used to work for 8 hours, but I didn't work for 8 hours. After 6 hours, I was done working. So I was checked out, and I remember, I think I did that for a while, and I did get a mini stroke again about a year and a half ago. And I remember I was like, this is it. I need to take myself out of work and just get myself better completely, because I seemed to be getting a lot of those mini strokes when I was in work. I suppose it was the stress, and the stress of being a parent. I'm a single parent with 2 small kids. My kids are now they're 7 and 4. They were really small kids. So you're trying to grapple with, running around, picking the child, putting them in daycare. All that was also being involved. And they said you have to separate your work life with your personal life. And I told them, how can I do it? I'm alone. How do I separate this to this is my life. My life starts at home, and I cannot separate my life at home with, the life, in work. So it was really hard. So I just had to make that decision to step out of work, because it was just not working for me, work and home life, the home balance. So I just had to step out of work, and it was really hard, even stepping out. They didn't want me to, because they were kind of trying to push me to resign, to write as a resignation letter, to say that, you're not able to work. And I told them, no, I'm not going to resign. I'll resign on my own terms, and I'm ready if I have to resign. And because it's a permanent job, so, why would I resign? And, I'm not resigning because I want to. I'm being pushed to. And I think because I was too much work for them, because they're like, oh, this is a small hospital, we cannot get you places, we cannot accommodate you all the time, maybe it's better if you resign. And I told them, no, I'm not resigning. I'll just step out of work, and I'll take, a break from work, and I'll decide what to do. So I took the break out, and it was even, I had to fight to take the break, because they felt like I shouldn't be, I'm not entitled, and they made me get all these papers, and they made me go to, and I remember one time they had a meeting, and we were seated there with the director of nursing and my direct manager, and thank God the vocational occupational therapist from NRH was there, and they were talking like I'm an object, I was being object, I was not present, they're talking about me, and I just got upset. I had to walk out, and I left the vocational, because I knew she would listen to everything, and then she would tell me, and later on she told me, I know that was very upsetting. I said, yeah, they're talking about me. It's I'm a little child who has no brain to make decisions for my own, So I think sometimes employers, you'd expect them to have, them being nurses, they're healthcare workers, you'd expect them to understand, but to be honest, I felt like I was not understood. I just felt like I was being pushed, like I was just this number, and I needed to fit in, because when I tried to reduce my hours, they said, oh no, you have to work a certain hours, because we are funded for a certain amount of hours, so you cannot work less hours. So, you're filling in for the hours. And I remember one day they asked me, how are you? I told them, to be honest, I'll tell you the truth. I work for 6 hours. The 2 hours I sit there, you're paying me for sitting in the office, because I can't, I've checked out. I just can't function anymore. My brain can't function anymore. And they were like, thank God you're, thank you, you're honest. I told them, I just can't continue. I think I have to step out of work and just take a break. And I fought for it. They accepted, but I really fought for it, even that, yeah.
I think it's hard because I think is it in law they have to make reasonable accommodations, but it's a very grey area. What's reasonable in your eyes is not reasonable in their eyes, and vice versa. You saying I'm sick and I can only work for 6 hours a day, to me sounds reasonable, because you're pushing yourself to even work for 6 hours a day. and they're going, no, you have to work for 8 hours, and you have to resign otherwise.
Yeah.
But you're sick.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, it was just, I felt really unsupported, really, like, by my workplace. Like, I just felt like I'm just an object, and I felt like I'm a bother to them more. So, like, you know, they were trying to almost push me to get out, because they knew that if they pushed me hard enough and I got to, like, you know, too burnt out, maybe I would just decide, you know, that's it, I'll resign. And I said, I'm not resigning, I'll resign on my own terms.
Yeah.
So I told them.
Oh, sorry, that's really brave.
Yeah.
And it's very tough.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the vulnerability that we all feel. So for you to say no when you don't feel supportive, I just commend your bravery.
And even you're speaking to your bosses or your superiors or whatever, that you would never normally speak to them like that.
Yeah.
You've been pushed so far that you're like, okay, hang on a second, I have to stand up for myself.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's what's really important when you said you had your vocational therapist with you.
Yeah.
To at least do a vocational course or return to work course. It gives you the information that you need before even engaging.
She knew them. I think she knew them from
before. Okay,
yeah,
so she
from
knew
dealing with
what
them.
you
So
were
she
up
knew that they're
against.
going to give me a hard time. And I think one of the OTs in work had kind of given her heads up that she's going to have a tough time. So you need to be you need to advocate for her, because they will try to push her.
And I think of all professions, I mean, that sums it up, and that's a very difficult thing. You're in healthcare.
Absolutely.
You know, like
Sometimes
that's
it's
shocking.
like, it's ignorance, as in they don't have the information to understand what you're going through.
Yeah.
But there's also courses and there's courses and there's like facilities out there for them to go and find out how they can support you. And they're not doing that, obviously.
I had an unusual situation that I had a trial run at sick. I was one of the first people in the country to get COVID, and subsequently I got long-term COVID. And I did want, this is before the hemorrhage, and I did want to get back to work. And the occupational health helped me. And I found a different job. It was on a call centre. And actually, when I went into the call centre to this new group, I found it was the happiest I was ever been in that, you know, in years. And I continued with that. But I do remember at the time, I knew I was only able for so much. And I know what that fatigue's like. And once you reach, you know, and this was with COVID, it wasn't brain hemorrhage. And that brain fog and that, you know, and I remember they were wanting to escalate the hours because I was performing okay. I was getting by. And I do remember having to fight and say, no, the house won't fall down if I don't work an extra 4 hours. And I remember being strong at that stage. But I'm so grateful I had a very, very strong GP that was my advocate. And she was, I can hear you wheezing on the phone. And also my new boss could understand that as well. So I suppose when this happened, then it wasn't a stranger, because there is that, you know, kind of guilt that you need to get back and fill a roster and all of that. But yeah, so I've had a couple of stabs at going back. And Rachel, her head wrecked, to try and get back. Trying to get back. Will I do this? Will I do that? Am I leaving what I have built up now? Am I putting it at risk? And I had support in getting back to a form of study, and my GP wouldn't sign it off. She said, no, take things at your time, do the art, do whatever, but you're not there yet. And she says, I don't feel happy in them, because I was going to go back full on in. And what's useful as well is to talk to your colleagues, to say, because you do romanticize about your work environment, because it's like a family you have to say goodbye to, and it's somewhere to go every day. And I do, as the time, and particularly when they reach out and they're nice, but I remember talking to one or two of my colleagues saying, is it still as nice as ever? And they're going, it has exploded. It's got so busy now. You know, the environment is lovely to look at, but the work hasn't changed. You know, same shit, different day was the term used. And that was, I needed to hear this, because I thought, I just want to get back to the girls. And I said, no, it's not. Stop romanticizing it, you know. So I had a little bit of insight, I suppose, to it. And you have to be brave and you have to fight, you know.
And I think people can underestimate, like, the reason you're going to art therapy, or the reason you're going to Headway, or to go, it's not just to go and have the crack for an hour. It's the having to get up, having to put on your makeup, having a shower, making lunch, getting Lewis's. There's so much outside involved that
Before
you're
you even get
to get to this hour and a half class.
Yeah.
it's say 4 hours out of your day, and you're exhausted after that. So you're simulating a work environment without actually having to go to work.
Yeah.
And that's all part of recovery as well, that people are like, sure, look at you, aren't you having a great time there? And you're like, I wish I was having a great time.
It's your day's work, you're nearly spent by the time you get into work. And that's I discovered that by doing the art with Headway, is that to get in there, you kind of nearly want your first medal.
Yeah.
Actually, to find the Lewis connections, I wanted my first Headway medal. And then arriving late all the time, so it's all these medals.
And you can't arrive to work late every day. Whatever about arriving to work, they're a lot more understandable.
It's all
understanding
the baby steps.
Yeah.
You don't have the auto that you used to. When you say it's like riding a bike. But no, you actually have to think about everything.
Yeah.
And that's where you're so exhausted when you get home or when you get here or whatever the case may be.
And you haven't actually even begun to do whatever you're here for.
And someone kind of flatters you into going back to work, saying you'll be great and and that's lovely and it's heartfelt. But then you realise a half an hour later, it's my 4th time going upstairs, and I still don't know what I went up for. So you kind of go, get a grip, get a grip.
Our next guest today is Linda.
Even before getting to work, the first thing for me was to get out of the house and attend a group. And that was art in my local community group. And to walk in there and try and represent yourself and say, am I entitled to be here because it's a local group? And there was kind of there was an older population there. And even just to settle into that group took an amount of bravery, and there was an anxiety that you have to drag yourself up by the shoulders and bring yourself through the door, fill in the forms, and then trying to integrate yourself to a group of strangers. But I was very lucky. There were an exceptionally nice group, and there was nobody asking any questions, which was great. And the other thing, what's really nice about something like that is it's a testing ground for work, because you don't have to make best friends with people in groups like that. You can actually do your business, have a really, really nice time, but you don't have to get married to them afterwards. You can actually leave and walk away. Whereas in your work environment, it's day in, day out, and you've got to continue those relationships. So it's just the testing ground first again. I'm so glad I did all of that, because I realised by the time I actually got to the group, I was knackered. So there is an anxiety about going into the group. Do you have to explain yourself? How many, at what point do you not tell people about the hidden challenges you have? And at what point do you tell them, because there's a certain part, there's a certain self-pride as well, that you want to kind of don't want people walking all over you, because you've earned the right to do something and be there, but at the same time you want people to be kind of understanding as that there are limitations as well. As my GP said to me, it takes months for the deficits to show themselves. And I think that's part of that is there something new coming? Everything I'm watching is I'm coughing a lot. Is my gag reflex gone? No, I just have a cough. So it triggers a lot of anxiety, and every time you get a headache, is it another hemorrhage, or is it just because you've spent too much on screen time, or you've overexerted yourself and not got enough night's sleep, or whatever? So I certainly would have felt all of those anxieties, and still do into new situations and even existing ones. And again, to avoid things, I suppose that I would have used the hemorrhage as a way to avoid things, and one of my family members said, you can use that once.
Yeah, I think it's similar to what Rachel said earlier, like being a teacher, the first day you meet your new class, fair enough, I was always going to be a bit nervous because you don't know the children and everyone has different personalities, and you might have had a meeting with the teacher from the previous year and you have an idea of what stage everyone was at. But now the thought of being in charge of 30 odd children, remembering who's going out when, who's in the toilet, break time is at this time, and then I also have to teach everybody, and then if someone doesn't understand something, I have to think of a way to explain it differently. And I'm teaching, is it 11 different subjects, and I'm supposed to be the person that knows everything. That I'm not able for it. And it's not even the being in charge part, it's the if they have a question that I can't answer and they're 10, that's like when you were saying about confidence earlier, that's going to be awful for me to be like, oh yeah, no, I'll get back to you. Like that's a really good idea, but it's not something that you have to be vulnerable, but at the same time, they're looking up at you because you're the person who's supposed to be teaching them, and then they're going back to their parents or they're going back to whoever saying, oh, such and such didn't know X, Y, and Z, and you're the one who's in charge of their education. Like I wouldn't want to ruin someone's education just because I'm not capable of doing my job properly.
Yeah, and that's really hard. I always said I could never be a teacher because there'd be one of me in every class. Little brat. But there's so much more, as you said, like if you're teaching 9 to 2 or something and then your paperwork and everything, but that's a huge responsibility. So I can understand that and the anxiety that goes with that. If someone asks me a legal question I don't know the answer to, you can you learn a way to, I'll get back to you on that, I'm just in the middle of something, because you have a notion, but that's not brain tumour related, that's just the way it is. But I can understand that being more vulnerable when you're in charge of a group of kids and remembering all that at the best of time, again, without any injuries. So I can totally
and not assuming everyone in the classroom's having a good day and there's been fights on yard or someone's parents haven't had an argument or everyone's feeling 100% and no one's getting sick in the corner or everyone's running out of the room or whatever.
I think me in full health I wouldn't be able for that, to be honest.
And throw a nut allergy in on top of that then as well.
Yeah. And as Yvette said earlier, like the whole sensory overload, because obviously people aren't, especially 30 children, aren't going to go, okay, we're going to be really quiet today. Like they drop stuff, they've forgotten books, they're screaming, they're scraping chairs, and then you're just
it's just too much
overwhelmed.
It's just an overload. I remember for me when I went back to work, the anxiety part of it is meeting people on the corridor. So I used to lock myself in the room, like the little room, because I was scared of meeting my former colleagues because I couldn't remember their names. And I just kept, every time I'm talking to them, I'm trying to look for their badge, looking for their badge to read their name. Like, someone is talking to you and they're like, oh, how are you? I was scared, like they would ask me, how I am. And I don't know if I was ready to talk about, like, the whole stroke issue. So I just wanted to be, just leave me alone, and I don't know your name, and I'm sorry you're talking to me. I remember your face vaguely, but I don't even remember which ward you are from. So I used to hide myself because I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to look like, that snob, like, they'll be thinking, what's wrong with that one? So, I hid myself. Like, I wouldn't go even for lunch. I would sit in the office alone. Like, for me, it was more lonely going back to work because I couldn't even go to the canteen because I just felt it was so overwhelming. Like, there's everybody, the foods, there's a lot, there's just the noise. It was horrible.
It's not all it's cracked up to be, because people see it as I'm better now, whereas it actually unfolds a whole new set of issues.
And as we wrap up this insightful discussion, let's hear a final word from each of our guests.
I would say before you return to work, pick out 1 or 2 very pragmatic colleagues and talk to them about the daily challenges in the organisation, because you may have forgotten what the pressures are like and how fast-paced it may be, because those are things you don't remember. And I think just talk to yourself in reality. Is that something? How are you coping with your home environment? How are you coping with your extended family environment? And then if you can't succeed in those, how are you going to work in a work environment, because there's people and there's challenges as well as having to do your job. So I would say talk to colleagues realistically about the job that you will be returning to.
For me, I'd say if you're returning to work, please don't rush back. Take your time, because brain injury, it's a lifetime thing. So and if you have to return, ease yourself back to work, and just remember you're not the same person who left the workplace. So give yourself grace if you're not able to do the things you are doing. And if you have to change the jobs, just be merciful to yourself and know that, you changed. It wasn't out of your own doing, but just be merciful to yourself, really, when you're going back to work. Don't push too much. It's not worth it.
I think, like Yvette just said, you're not the same person, and forgive yourself for that. I think give yourself a break, and I'm sure everyone who's listened to this or who's around this table has been told that 500 times. And because I said to myself, if I took a drink every time or a shot or anything for the amount of time people had said that to me, I would have died long ago of alcohol poisoning. But dear God, does it mean something? And ask for help. I said, talk to your colleagues, ask for help, don't rush, and just give yourself a break.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that, as I said earlier, a lot of people think returning to work is you ticking off that final box of being better, and actually it really isn't. There's so much holistic healing that needs to be done as well, because everyone's been through a traumatic incident that needs to also be uncovered and talked through as well. And then knowledge is power, so doing like a vocational course, talking to a vocational therapist, doing a return to work course, so that you know what your rights are, you know what you need to do in order to get back to work, or you know that you can say to your boss or your colleagues or whatever, oh, check out this video, or to be able to, for them to understand or be more sympathetic of where you're coming from, because people will forget that there's still something wrong with you. You're back in work a month and people forget that you've even been gone. So they still need to have that sympathy 3, 6, 8, 12 months down the line, that you're still struggling with this brain injury, because that just doesn't go away.
And that brings us to the end of today's discussion of returning to work, which I think we can all agree is an important issue to discuss for any of our listeners who may be in a similar situation to our guests today.
Yeah, absolutely, Shane. We hope that anyone out there listening to this episode will gain comfort in knowing that they're not alone in how they are feeling, and will be encouraged to reach out to Headway for support on their journey back to the workplace. And as always, a big thank you to our incredible guests for sharing their stories and shedding light on the journey of returning to work.
And of course, thank you to our listeners for joining us on this episode. Your support means the world to us.
If you found today's episode resonating with you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We have more compelling topics lined up for future episodes.
Connect with us on social media to share your thoughts, questions and experiences in relation to turning to work after a brain injury.
Join us next week as we tackle another important topic of returning to driving. Until then, take care, stay curious, and keep exploring the many facets of life after brain injury here on the Headway Podcast.